Good morning. You're listening to KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller in the morning. Thank you all for joining us. Remember, for all things, all the time, KIDOTalkRadio.com. And don't forget the Canyon County Kids Fair coming up January 26th. Tickets, $5 for adults, $3 for kids at the Idaho Center from 10 to 6. The Paw Patrol will be there. Outstanding time. We look forward to it. More details, CanyonCountyKidsExpo.com. With us, our great friend, author, leader, motivator of men and women, a man of faith. Dennis Mansfield joins us. Dennis, good to have you with us today.
Kevin, it's great to be with you. Thanks so much.
You know, I always love having you on here because you just ask a question and you just go with it, and it's really a very refreshing and different vibe that we have here. It's food for your brain type of thing. So,
thank you. Well, you ask great questions.
Well, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about your latest project.
Oh yeah.
For those that aren't familiar with you, best-selling author, man of the world, a person that helps people. Tell us a little bit about your latest project, sir.
Well, a couple of years ago, I had challenged a group of friends to get bike riding again. And so we went out and started working and decided, let's set a goal to eventually go to Europe and bike the Danube River. Right next to it, they have a kind of a greenbelt thing there. And so there were 6 of us, and we worked our tails off and ended up getting on a barge and bike. Well, one of the cities that the barge and bike went through, so you stayed on a barge at nighttime, and then you biked from kilometer after kilometer, mile after mile, and then the boat caught up with you. One of the cities that caught up with us in was
so you lived on the barge.
You did.
Sorry, I'm a little slow though. I was just lived on the barge.
It's kind of a traveling hotel.
Okay,
it wasn't like living in a van down by the river, but it was Europe. It was a European barge.
Now, okay, sorry, because I'm like the ultimate couch potato. So for fun, you biked all day and lived on the barge.
On the barge. Okay. Yeah. At least they had a motor and they didn't make us row.
Sure, exactly.
I felt pretty good about that. And so one of the cities was Vienna, and I don't believe I'd ever been there. As a kid, I was in a military family, so we traveled all over Europe, but I don't have any memory of Vienna. And we went into the Central Platz there, and that's their word for square. And so we went in, and I was having Wiener Schnitzel. I'm in Austria. Come on,
Right.
Beer and Wiener Schnitzel. How much
biking
more?
And living on the barge.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir.
And saying a little bit of German here and there.
Right, yeah.
Maybe even being correct while I was speaking German. And I was sitting at this table, and this flash of inspiration, memory, I don't know what it was, hit me, and I just went, wait a minute. I had read on a BBC transcript of a show they did years before about a place called Cafe Central. And it was in Vienna, Austria. And so I asked, Hans, the waiter, what do you want, American dog? And I said, hey, listen, where is Cafe Central? Is it anywhere near us? And he goes, oh, yeah, right over here. I mean, it was a typical American, German, Austrian expression of...
Yeah, difference between an Austrian and a German.
Notice
yes.
I corrected myself. There was a whole thing in the 40s that decided
right.
that. And he said, no, go down here and to the right. So we got on our bikes after we finished the Wiener Schnitzel to, work off the beer and Wiener Schnitzel in a good way. I went about 300 yards,
Sure.
until I got to Cafe Central. And I parked the bikes, all 6 of us, and we went in, and the group of friends said, now, why are we here at Cafe Central? So here I was, and I'm like, you guys, this place right here in January of 1913 was the meeting place of the most notorious would-be tyrants in the 20th century. And they were kind of like, of course, Susan had heard this story, and she knew, Cafe Central.
Right.
And it was literally the coffee shop in the neighborhood where the following young men lived in Vienna at the same time. Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Leon Trotsky, middle-aged Vladimir Lenin, and teenage Marshal Tito. I mean, think of that.
Right.
They all lived, and they all went into this coffee shop. They had pastries, played chess. There's even I don't know how accurate the story is, but it's ongoing, story that they tell that Stalin and Hitler played chess there. Trotsky definitely played Hitler in chess because he played everybody in chess. He played Sigmund Freud. How'd you like that?
Right.
Why did you move that way? Why? And Trotsky, of course, was the. I would argue that he was one of the strongest pillars of communism, even before Lenin. And so you've got this incredible assortment of maniacal brains that ended up killing over 40 million people, or at least the deaths were directly attributable to these people in this room. So my question that hit me as a both nonfiction and fiction writer, I thought, wait a minute. If there's a way you could go back through time to that month of January 1913, when we know they were there all together, what would you do? Knowing what we know about what they did, what would you and I do?
What would you do?
Well, that was the question.
Right.
Because I ultimately said the knee-jerk reaction was, I'd go in and I'd bomb the place. I'd take these guys out. I'd do what needed to be done so that 6 million Jews were not killed, so that people of faith were not killed, and gypsies were not killed, and homosexuals were not killed. I would do that because if I knew it and could be there, that would be. Then I started thinking, wait a minute. What would that be like? What would that literally be like? And I started beginning the research project of saying, so Hitler goes. You take him out at age 24. Who surfaces? And the answers began to shock me. I went back.
All in your mind.
I did research. I went through all of who was the next in command.
Right.
How would they move forward? What was the succession plan, if you will? And then I started asking the question, how would that have affected America? And so the creativity, hopefully creativity that rests within me, began to take the whole plot and move it through. Now, the second part of this whole equation was, where's my DeLorean? How do I go 88 miles per hour in this fictional story?
By the way, our great friend Dennis Mansfield joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM, talking about his latest project. What would you call that? Historical fiction?
Historical fiction.
By the
Science
way,
fiction,
if
really.
people want to get a
Historical
hold of you, how can they?
DennisMansfield.com.
Ooh,
pretty good. And if you go onto that page, as you go onto that page, go to the author section because we have a complimentary first chapter of the book resting there so that people can, and it's To Trust in What We Cannot See is the title of the book. I wanted as short a title as I possibly could have.
Well, what does it take to write? Everybody says they have a book in them. We all want to write, and then you have people that, and you've done publishing so many ways, whether it's a big publisher, whether it's partnering with a regional publisher outlet, whether it's self-publishing.
Yeah.
What is it, the old Richard Ben Kramer book, what does it take?
I think that, first off, there's got to be the motivation to do it. Years ago, my bride Susan told me, you need to write. And I would hear that, and I did white papers.
Because you talked a lot, or?
No. In fact, I always listened to my wife.
Right.
Always.
Fair enough, sir.
Wise man.
Right.
Okay, wise guy. And so she motivated me to look at it. And for me, as you well know, because we've covered this.
Well, remember, there are a lot of new people, though, that are tuning in, and they don't know Dennis Mansfield.
Yeah.
Shocking that people in the Treasure Valley don't know Dennis
Not
Mansfield.
shocking at all. I have been a bit of a ghost for a bit of a time. We lost our oldest son now almost 10 years ago. And Nate passed away at age 27. And in the process of that, I was approached by Simon & Schuster to write about what we as conservative, Christian, connected people, how did we deal with the death of a son who had had a series of very difficult arrests because of drug addiction, ultimately passing away at such a young age. And so that book is Beautiful Nate. And that's how I started the actual publishing side of life, because they essentially gave me a contract for a year, and I just wrote for that year. In fact, not too far. At that time, we lived here on the river, and we were not too far from your studio. when I sat and pounded out in my laptop everything I could. Had a great editor. And then when I was done and the book was taken in and then published and has touched thousands and thousands and thousands of people, I began to ask the question, wait a minute, why do I need a brutal, cathartic thing like that to keep writing? I love writing. I've written for so long in journals since 1983, almost every day. Totals over 11,000 hours of writing. Let me keep doing it. And so my second book, Finding Malone, came about.
Sure.
And then fiction books, and then a daily devotional.
Where is the need for just about everybody to write? Where do you think that comes from?
I think it's the desire to communicate and to express in a way that we can touch the most people in the shortest period of time. For example, right now, you and I are having the honor of, on these airwaves, touching many, many people's lives, encouraging them, cajoling them. Well, think about that in a written form. Abraham Lincoln used to write, during his presidency, pamphlets that were 10, 12 pages long. Mm-hmm. And then they'd print those up, and they'd be distributed to 500,000 to 1 million people. That's how he got his word out and talked to people. I think the desire to listen to others and then to talk back and have them listen to you is a fundamental part of the human condition. And if we can do that in a way that blesses people, and instead of this just haranguing and, I'm smarter than him and she's dumber than me and whatever. And instead, if we could say, hey, I want to listen to you, write what you want to write.
Everybody wants to be heard, but no one wants to listen.
I think you're right, Kev.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I can tell you that I was guilty of being in that first category, and it took the death of my son to move me more towards, hey, tell me about your problems. Tell me about your benefits. Tell me about what your successes
and fighting
are.
the urge to talk.
Me too.
Right.
Although I understand the hashtag Me Too, there's nothing more fundamentally frustrating than to be communicating to someone about some deep inner anguish or maybe some great success, and have them switch it on you immediately. Go, oh yeah, let me tell you about me, and you just sit there and you go, okay, all right. So rather than do that, I simply ask up front, tell me about yourself.
Right.
And I do that in my books. There's a lot of questions. That's why this fiction book, To Trust in What We Cannot See, really asks the question, not just Dennis, what would Dennis do? But what would Susan do? What would Kevin do? What would Ray do? What would everybody do if they had that opportunity? And I think in the long run, there's this deep desire for us to leave an imprint on the world around us, that we would leave it better than how we found it. That, I think, is key.
That would be the goal. More with Dennis Mansfield, DennisMansfield.com. Coming up next, you're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Continuing on with our great friend Dennis Mansfield, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Don't forget Sean Hannity this afternoon beginning at 3. Every now and then we like to touch base with Dennis, get his thoughts on life. You can check him out at DennisMansfield.com. Talking about his new book, but really it seems that when you write, you learn more about yourself.
Yeah. I think, Kevin, that is a brilliant observation, because when we write, we all learn more about ourselves. I had a dear woman contact me about journals, because I posted recently on my Facebook, Dennis Mansfield Author, about a picture of all of the journals from 1983 until 2018, which I just closed the last page of, wrote the last, and talked.
You must have a big storage unit.
Sometimes I feel like I have a huge storage unit.
Right.
And she wrote, and she said, "Oh, what happens if you lose your journal?" And I explained to her. She in her letter, or in her email, said she had her purse stolen and her journal was in it, and she lost it. And I said, "Look, here's the thing. My heart breaks for you. I totally get it. The key is large windshield, small rear view mirror. Look forward. Write. Keep writing. I don't care if you dull a pencil. I don't care if you pound the keyboards. I don't care if you text. Keep writing." And that's really the comment to anybody out there who's got a book in their heart. Maybe the book is just demanding to come forward. Keep writing. Write every day. I schedule time every day to write. For me, I do a lot of research during that time as well, but I write. And there's a joy that comes out. I've helped 2 other authors who have co-authored with me, Cameron Ventura, who has a great series of stories in him to write. So we did a book called Do or Die Time. Ryan Pacheco, who is a great law enforcement officer in the Valley with Ada County Sheriffs. He and I did 2 books about Isaac Jones, about the idea of spy versus spy sort of thing, without the Mad Magazine impact. And it was fun. I mean, it was tough because it's two different people writing. It was with Cameron as well. But the end product was it sharpened my pencil, and I write better now because I was with these 2 men.
Dennis Mansfield joining us, Kevin Miller in the Morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Check out Dennis at DennisMansfield.com. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. Appreciate it, Larry. Thank you. Dennis, as we're kind of perusing our way through the new year, new resolutions, new sorts of things, I've always been amazed at how you can articulate overcoming challenges. Mm. We all have challenges in life. Now you can be like me and hide in your little room and such, and under the table, and drown your sorrows at the Golden Corral, or be like you and talk about facing challenges. So for people listening right now, how do we overcome challenges? Mm. And be positive.
Yeah, I had the honor of going through a program back in 2004 that's periodically comes to Boise. It's called the Focus Seminar Program, and it was really an eye-opening thing for me because you'd walk into this room and they'd have these banners, on the wall. And one of the banners that absolutely made me almost go to my knees and, oh my heavens, I get this. It said, "What are you pretending not to know? What are you pretending not to know?" And I think over the years, in these now 15 years, I've asked that question to myself many times. What am I pretending not to know? There are things that we all pretend to know.
Right.
But what is it that we're pretending not to know? And part of it is like when you can go to things like, it'll make you better rather than make you bitter. You can deal with struggles with, all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his plan. That's a scriptural reference from Romans. Or you could just go with, it'll all get better. Well, you know what? It doesn't always all get better.
Right.
When Nate, our son Nate, was involved in a drug addiction, it got worse. I mean, he was essentially busted 4 days out from a very important moment in my life when I was running for office. And I lost. And it was brutal. And it didn't get better. And as a result, Nate lost. Nate lost his freedom when he went to jail. It didn't get better. Prison, that was around the corner. It didn't get better. The question isn't whether it's going to get better because we think it will. The question is whether we have a response mechanism in us that looks for the good and praises it, no matter what. Is there good to be found in all things? You bet. Guess what? When my son was incarcerated, he had 3 hots and a cot, and I knew he was alive. Okay? That's a good thing for anybody out there who struggles with someone who struggles with addiction. You know where they are. Did it bind Susan and me together as husband and wife? You bet it did. Because we realized that we couldn't be fear-based parents and child-centered parents, because that doesn't work. People joke about, I'm a helicopter mom. Oh, heavens, shush. Stop that. That's not a good thing. Because the ultimate question is, are you raising a child or are you raising an adult? And most people are raising children, and they get 18, 19, 21-year-old versions of a child who is saying, yeah, I kind of like the basement working on the Nintendo, Stop. Our goal is to raise adults.
Nintendo's an antiquated reference these days.
I know, but what's the new the Mario Brothers one that came out?
Your guess is as good as mine.
At least we have decades of remembering the different games, and the application is still the same.
You know, we've just come out of the holiday season. We've got about 2.5 minutes left in this segment, but, you know, it is a dark time for a lot of people in the holidays. And even now, the holidays are over and you have that post-holiday gloom.
Yes. It's a difficult thing to push through. I look at January and I always say to myself, you know, because my wife is a teacher.
Sure. Back to school.
Yeah, back to school. The opportunity to learn more. The opportunity to look at February 14th, Valentine's Day, as the midpoint,
right,
you know, of the school year, and the opportunity to say, you know, spring's right around the corner. See, I really have come to the conclusion in dealing with losses, and I've had many losses, probably not as many as some of the folks out there, but still a lot. I've come to the conclusion to say, you know what, and because I'm a believer and a follower of Christ, I say, Lord, you know, I don't get it, but I get you. And I know that you're not going to let me down. And I know that at whatever I'm faced, I can still push into you, embrace you, and know that you'll embrace me back. And there's a lot of comfort in that. There are people that don't believe in God, and I respect that and understand that. I just can tell you that that's a lonely way to live. When you know that someone's next to you, you're good.
I'm with you. And in the minute that we have left here on KIDO Talk Radio in this segment, Dennis, what would you say to someone, though, that's struggling? I always like speaking to people like yourself that are very successful because, you know, we've all been there in the car listening to the radio, and that one voice can make a difference, your voice.
You are not alone. And as you're listening, as you're driving, you are not alone. He who began a good work in you from the day you were born, maybe even the day you were conceived, he is there with you. If you're driving and there's no one in the seat next to you, there is. The power of the Holy Spirit is incredible. And you talk about the internet going everywhere. He was the original internet. And he listens and is open to prayers. And the prayer is simply, I need help. And when we do that, God has a way of showing up. You know, a lot of people say, hey, I don't know where God is. I don't understand God. The point is, he understands you and he knows where you are.
Our great friend Dennis Mansfield with us. You want to check him out, learn more at DennisMansfield.com, on Facebook, Dennis Mansfield Author. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller, good morning. Once again, we're back. Thank you all for joining us. Appreciate you. We understand that you have so many listening options in the morning, and we are so blessed to have you at 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Our great friend Dennis Mansfield with us so early in the morning, so early in the year. A couple things. I'd love to pick your brain about politics. Gentleman that you've known for years, now Governor Brad Little.
Yes.
Replacing the Hulk Hogan of Republican politics, now former Governor Butch Otter. Your thoughts on both men having competed against Butch Otter and have known Brad Little for years?
You know, I think that Butch needs to be given a pat on the back and told thanks for your service. I really do.
A lot of angry people at Butch.
There are, and you know, good leadership leaves a wake of people that support you and people that are offended by you. Good leadership just does that. I think he's been a good leader. That now is over. The age of Otter is over. The opportunity to see Brad Little take his Senate background and his years as a lieutenant governor and now his time as governor to have defeated really one of the most powerful recent political forces in Idaho, Raul Labrador.
Guy that you helped get elected.
Indeed, I did. I was honored to be in that position.
One of the wonderful secrets going back to 2010.
Yeah, Raul is a good candidate, and he served well, and he's a good friend. And then the explosive nature of Tommy coming out of nowhere with millions of dollars.
Tommy Ahlquist.
My heavens. Dr. Ahlquist.
Touchdown Tommy.
He came in, did it.
Yeah.
Well, to survive those two.
But hold on. You being the political animal that you are, and we very rarely get a chance to do this. You take a look at the Brad Little political machine. And we learned a little bit about this from the New York Times piece, the video clips of Congressman Labrador ripping President Trump.
Yeah.
To have the genius to get that to the president. There are a lot of things that we'd like to get to the president. Heck, we'd like the president to come to Idaho.
Sure.
But to get the means to get that to him so that he would not endorse, number one, brilliant. And then you go back to the 2 weeks at the end where they put in the ad of Congressman Labrador ripping President Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Congressman couldn't respond, didn't have the funds.
He did not. That's
and
right.
even when he did, and I would have had him voice the spot, David Boston. Nobody knows David Boston.
Nobody knows. Yeah, exactly.
Horrible connection. And the Little campaign was brilliant in their frequency because you had Brad Little's ads, you had the realtors, you had the cattlemen, you had this, and it was just a pounding.
It was. It was.
So you put on your hat. You're the expert. I've kind of framed it. What was going on in your mind as someone who has run successful campaigns, has mentored these folks, and have known these guys for years?
Yeah. I felt like I was observing the last mile of a marathon, and the energy level in my dear friend Raul's race was gone. It just was gone. The money was gone. The opportunity was gone, and in a real way, he was such a fantastic runner, to keep the metaphor going, that he should have broken the tape.
He thought that he did.
I
thought
think
that
so.
Interviewing him the day of, he was very confident. That's no knock against him. He was leading the whole time, surviving the barrage of negativity
Yep.
from both Tommy and Brad,
Yeah.
being outgunned. But one thing about Brad Little and Tommy Alquist, and even Congressman Labrador admitted this to me. He said he should have worked harder. And those guys worked.
Well, there's a difference between harder and smarter.
Here I am leading the witness. I'm going to take my advice and shut up and listen.
Now, there's a difference between working harder and working smarter. And I think in reality, and I've told this to Raul, I was deeply saddened by the leadership of the LDS Church for the fact that all appearances were that they moved in a way that didn't go to Tommy and say, Tommy, back off. We've got, a great congressman in Raul Labrador.
Yeah, but this is America.
I know.
Everybody can run.
Anybody can.
Now, wait a minute. Hold on now.
Yeah.
Then you could say the same thing about Raul because Russ Fulcher was in the race first.
Well, you could. And
we're going to get ourselves in trouble here, Dennis.
No, we're not. We're going to go to the core of it. The core of it was this. Somebody within the LDS leadership made a decision that united people behind Tommy. And that's just the way.
You really think that's what
I
happened?
believe it because if you were to go back and look at the statistics, very few people even knew that Raul Labrador was LDS.
Well, doesn't that really go back to who won the East?
Partly it does. And partly it goes back to Mike Simpson and Mike and Raul not always being together.
Well, hold on. And in fairness, when you vote against the Boulder White Clouds,
Yes.
when you vote against the INL, you're not endearing yourself to Congressman Simpson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, as someone who makes a lot of boneheaded moves, I've learned that the hard way. But it just seemed to be, well, I'm sorry, Dennis, but it just seemed to be that was a lot to overcome. And you had Mike Simpson, you had Jim Risch.
Oh, yeah.
You had power players backing the lieutenant governor.
That didn't bother me. The power players oftentimes were the people that supported candidates that I beat. So I didn't worry about that. What I did worry about was the rank and file, the moms and dads, didn't know Raul's strong background of faith.
Yeah.
They just didn't know it. And so I think that was a disadvantage, and I think Raul would tell us that today. Would he run as an LDS member now? I don't think so, but I think the idea of understanding, allowing people to see that he was a man of faith would and should be brought out if he chooses to be involved in future races, which I hope he does.
You think he will? What's
I
his
hope
future?
he does. I don't know about this whole thing with the interior or any of the decisions there. That doesn't even bother me. If he came to me and asked me for advice, which he may, I'd give him my thoughts. I mean,
what advice would you give him?
I tell you what, I'd give it to any of my classmates from West Point or any of my friends who are involved on the national level. I'd give it to Pence's staff. I'd give it which is, holy cow, if you want a short-term job, take it.
Right.
Because there's nothing. I've never seen it in any president. And
Wait a minute, I thought we were talking about state politics.
Well, we are talking about state and federal.
Sure.
But I've never seen it in any way that someone who jumps into D.C. has such insecurity about whether they'll be there.
I don't know if you're allowed on here.
months.
We only allow pro-presidential Trump people on. But and we'll get to that.
It's crazy there, though.
We'll get to that in a second. But back to the congressman, I've written this on KIDOTalkRadio.com. I think that if he wants to make a difference, and look, who am I to say, here's how you make a difference? The guy served in the state legislature, he served in Congress, but he should do what Russ Fulcher did on steroids. Come back here,
Yep.
form a local pact or whatever,
Yep.
tour the state, create that army, build on the base you have, and whether it's 4 years or 8 years, you'll have the grassroots folks. Time was his enemy.
Yeah.
He wanted to come. He could have stayed in Congress
said.
forever.
Well said.
But you're involved in those groups. What do you what do you make of that?
I think it'd be a great idea, and if Raul made the decision to come back and invest himself further, as he did when he was a state legislator and as he's done as a congressman, into building up other people to run for office, he would gain by that so much more support, so much more positive endearment by people. You know, I've always believed that that when we encourage others, we ourselves are encouraged. And oftentimes with political people, you know, there's that old saying, goes back to the 1930s, that you can never go back to Pocatello.
You can never go back to Pocatello.
It's a very strange Washington, D.C. expression.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
It's very interesting. You can never go back to Pocatello, and it was framed by a Idaho legislator who, when he went back to D.C. and eventually, as a congressman, lost, he stayed in D.C. There are copious amounts of examples of people over the last even 15 years who didn't come back. I mean, the lure of the Potomac, I don't know, but whatever
Potomac
it was.
fever, yeah.
Whatever it was. I think that what Russ did when he lost the governor's, the nomination for the governor, and then when he chose to just keep plugging.
Never stopped working.
He
that guy.
never
Yeah.
stopped working, to the point that when the discussion was made between the parties about who's going to run for what, that Russ gave it everything he had. He's now our congressman.
And you've known him since he was a kid. Huh?
I have. I had the joy of being his business coach early years. And, of course, as you know, I do a lot of coaching with a lot of executives.
But then you didn't back him in the primary, I remember, right?
Well,
I have a long memory there.
You have a very long memory. And I called him
Right.
because I had endorsed him for governor and then endorsed Dave Leroy, who really I hold as one of two men that brought me to Idaho. When Susan and I moved in the early 90s, late 80s, it was Dave Leroy who invited us to come. And then I had the chance in early 90s to encourage him to run for Congress. And he goes, no, Dan, I'm not going to do it. So we went and found a lady named Helen Chenoweth. She ran, and then at the last minute, Dave Leroy said, I'm a candidate. I said, you're not my candidate. I already gave my word, buddy. But I promised him at that
Right.
time that if he ever ran again, I would support him.
More coming up with Dennis Mansfield next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. KIDO Talk Radio, best-selling author, historian, reporter, motivator, Dennis Mansfield joining us on 107.5 FM, 580 AM. It's interesting you have so many people moving to Idaho. I know you talk to folks all the time.
I do.
And you mentioned Helen Chenoweth and
Yes.
David Leroy.
All old name.
Right,
Old news.
right. Even going back to 2010 seems
Yeah.
like ancient history.
It is. It is. One of the things I love doing is I love asking people, why are you here? What brought you here? And of course, we all know the answers, the lifestyle, the
Obama
nature.
brought me here, but yeah.
Or maybe sent you here. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. Some people, yes. Right.
And contrary, I'm a pro-growther. I love the fact that
Now,
new
wait a
people
minute.
come in.
Now,
Come
come on.
on, I'm a
Come on.
pro-growther. I'm pro-life and pro-growther. How can
Wait
I
a
not
minute.
be
What are you, Steve Forbes in 96, Hope, Growth, and Opportunity?
You do have a good memory, my brother.
Now, but all these folks coming in,
Yeah.
look at what they've done to our beloved connector. Look at Chinden. Look at Fairview. Look at every place. I mean, it's crazy. Look at just going on Myrtle.
Yeah, I don't lay the blame at them. I lay the blame at the planners. I lay the blame at our mayor of Boise.
Well, he's
I lay the blame at the AC. You go all through the Ada County ACHD. You lay it out. Here's the reality. We have people coming here. Do your job and prepare for it.
Now, wait
Do
a
your
minute.
job and prepare
We've
for
got
it.
some good bike lanes, thanks to Mayor Peter.
Yes, we do. I love the scooters too. But guess what? That doesn't help with the people who are out in Kunuk trying to scoot their way in. We have been given, I think, in the city of Boise, a municipality that has been so disconnected to growth and the ability to have the infrastructure for growth. They want to tax you, but they want to use those taxes in ways that I don't necessarily see as pro-growth.
Well, back to your political hat.
Yeah.
Dave Beater will be running again.
Yes.
Is he unbeatable?
Oh, no. No, man, no woman is unbeatable.
What would it take to beat Dave Beater?
I tell you what it would be, somebody to call him out for what he is. He's an absolute center of the progressive movement that has been twisting Idaho's political landscape. He is the quasi umbilical cord of that. And all I know, he's a fine man on many levels. I like him personally. I do not like his worldview. I don't.
Well, you can recall when Obamacare was being debated, he shuffled through that non-binding resolution, and he's made Boise very political, like a junior Portland. But
yeah,
we take a look at it, and we have a lot of contributors to the program here on KIDO Talk Radio. And you look at the Republican Party in Boise, though, in Ada County, it's not good from what we hear.
Yeah, there's a need for women and men of leadership to stand up, and that I believe that there are people that are interested politically, and they've got to get involved. It is no longer an opportunity to say, "Oh, my mom was involved, my dad was involved." I look at young men and women in their 20s and 30s and say, "How can I get you elected? How can somebody in their 40s? How can I help you achieve what you want?" And then bring them together in a way that communicates clearly, as I believe the House and the Senate has to do in the leadership, of what's our policy? What's our policy on our fiscal policy? What's our policy on the environment? And then move on that. Right now, this is how I view it. Ready? It's bad high school.
Right. Now we're going to get to that in a second here, but I have to ask you, you're a pro-growth guy.
Yeah.
The libs are moving in. They're at the gates. Let's not have the libs here. Let's shut off growth.
That is not true. That is not true.
Listen to me. Look at Ada County.
I
libs,
get that. No.
Paulette Jordan.
And and what's happening, and do Paulette Jordan, look at her. The whole issue is turnout of vote. And what we failed to do was turn out the men and women who suddenly realized, oh my gosh, Paulette Jordan's, plural, are all around us.
With no money, no organization, really no message.
Yeah, no message.
Very inarticulate candidate, but she did better than expected. See,
much better. She blew my mind.
I'm a little worried with, you and your growthers. You're bringing in the libs.
Yeah. See, here's the deal. To quote Uncle Rico in Napoleon Dynamite. Okay,
Rico,
I'm sorry, man. It's the Bible and Uncle Rico.
I love
okay?
Uncle Rico.
Here's the dealio.
Right.
All right. The opportunity to buy and own property and to grow that property up is vital, again, to the human quality. We have to do that. The world is not solely for renters. It's for property owners.
Where did that come from? I mean, we're talking about the libs moving in, and you're talking about affordable housing.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about affordable. I'm talking about buying homes that increase in value. The idea of only having a renter mentality,
right,
and that we will remain renters for the next 10, 20 years, to me is not acceptable. We've got to be able to say, what's going on for the opportunity to purchase homes. And once you become a homeowner, something changes, man. I don't know what it is, but it's, there ain't no more landlord. It's just you.
Yeah, and the bank. More coming up with Dennis Mansfield next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Our great friend Dennis Mansfield joining us. Every time I have you on, and hopefully we'll get a chance for you to give us your unfiltered, uncensored view of the president. That's always welcome.
Thank you.
But our old friend, your great friend, if not best friend, Austin Hill,
yes,
who passed recently. We did a history of the radio station that we put together. We had a segment there about Austin.
Yeah.
For people that never knew Austin Hill, and maybe those that did listen to him, what would you say?
I think Austin was the epitome of what was sung in the musical Camelot. For once, there was this shining spot. He had an ability to radiate, and when they talk about Camelot. They talk about this moment in time where everything that came together. You and he brought together an axis of good in the valley from morning till night, of people who could express themselves and not feel like a whack job, who could be able
Well, wait
to
a minute. What was that thing he did on Friday? The politically incorrect. I mean,
All right, so
people
here's the
still
deal.
talk about that today.
And it was like politically correct
Yes.
Fridays. And I called him the very first time.
Did you have a name?
Scorpio. You ready for this? He did not know it was me.
Right.
I call him and go, "Hello, dude. What's going on, man?"
Oh my gosh.
And later,
Right.
several weeks later, we had lunch together. And he goes, "There's this dude that calls me. I don't know if he's really a stoner. His name's Scorpio,
Right.
and he calls me, and I don't know what to do with him. I think he's an ex-addict or an inmate or something."
Right.
And I'm sitting across the table, eating my lunch, and I just look him in the eye and I go, "I don't know, dude.
Right.
I just let him talk." And Austin about spit out whatever he was eating. That was the joy.
Right.
That was the spontaneity, the laughter. That we take issues seriously. We must never take ourselves seriously.
Right.
That's what I've learned. And no offense to a lot of my dear progressive friends and liberals that are out there. They not only take the issues seriously, they take themselves seriously. So come on, laugh, dude.
Sure.
Turn on your inner Scorpio.
Can you imagine
man.
how much fun he'd have with all the Californians coming in now?
Oh, he would have a blast. That Friday show would be a Thursday and Friday show.
It would be. It would be. And his family?
They're doing well. Nell is continuing. She's an incredible musician. Graham, I have the honor of mentoring him and we meet on a fairly irregular basis. He's college guy now, so it's like whenever the chicks and the beer are set aside, then there's time for Den.
I see. It's all about priorities.
Rightfully so.
Dennis Mansfield, DennisMansfield.com. Once again, thank you, my friend. Always appreciate it. The hour goes so fast.
Fast, man. It's an honor to be with you, and I know as President Trump says, make America great again.
Right.
You're making America great again because you're making Idaho great again. And I'm honored to be in the studio anytime you invite me in, because you are one of the voices that's just consistently bringing truth to the Valley. Thank you, Kevin.
God bless, Dennis.
Thank you.
You're listening to Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.